Climate change is real. Our future is not sealed. You may deny it, but you'll suffer too.
At Greenpeace, our mission statement is that as an independent campaigning organisation, we use non-violent, creative confrontation to expose global environmental problems and force the solutions that are essential to a green and peaceful future for our environment and our world. Our goals at Greenpeace are to protect biodiversity in all its forms, prevent pollutions and abuse of the Earth's ocean, land, air and freshwater, end all nuclear threats, and promote peace, global disarmament and non-violence, and in doing so ensure the ability of the Earth to continue to nurture life. Greenpeace was founded in 1971 in Vancouver, Canada, after a team of activists took a fishing boat to a small island off the coast of Alaska in order to observe and draw attention to US underground nuclear testing. The island was home to thousands of endangered animals and other wildlife whose existence was even more in jeopardy because of the nuclear testing. Unfortunately, the mission was intercepted before the boat could reach the island, but the journey created much public interest and the nuclear testing eventually ceased. This small group of activists dubbed themselves Greenpeace and went on to form a huge organisation that fights against environmental problems and pursues a green future. At Greenpeace, we have several policies set out for the future in order to combat climate change. Zero carbon. Carbon emissions from the UK power sector will be nearly zero by 2030. Cut coal. Rule out all emissions from new coal-fired power stations. Cut global emissions by 42% by 2020. We commit to helping to pay for low-carbon development in developing countries. Repowering. We commit to ensuring that at least 15% of total energy use comes from renewable sources. And we commit to setting up a green infrastructure bank that would lend to major low-carbon projects. As part of our mission statement, we involve ourselves in non-violent actions that we believe directly benefit the fight against climate change. Over the years, we have been involved in many actions that created public awareness and media attention. Just in the past year alone, pressure from Greenpeace has led to the following worldwide achievements. In November 2015, the Queensland Government passed legislation to stop coal companies from dumping their dredge spoil into the Great Barrier Reef. The New South Wales Premier, Mike Baird, released the state's shark management plan in October, and it now excludes the expansion of deadly shark netting. In September 2015, Greenpeace supporters asked NAB not to fund the reef destruction, and after months of negotiation, they finally agreed. Indonesia's second largest paper company has agreed to stop trashing forests and peatlands. New South Wales introduced Cash for Containers scheme, where the state's residents can claim a 10-cent refund on plastic bottles and cans in January 2015. In late 2014, an hour after Greenpeace supporters started calling on Lawson's auctioneers to stop the sale of African black rhino horns, they withdrew these items from the auction. After months of negotiation, Johnson & Johnson announces a commitment to eliminate forest destruction from its palm oil supply chains. After 17,000 Greenpeace supporters wrote to Sydney University, management instructed its Australian fund managers to make no further investments in coal and consumable fuels. Adidas agreed to kick toxic chemicals out of its production lines following pressure from Greenpeace supporters. And throughout all of these projects, Greenpeace still manages to get hundreds of thousands of people to march together all over the world in the name of protecting our climate.
According to the fourth assessment report released by Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change and much comprehensive scientific research, there are several key considerations for climate change-induced disasters: an increase in frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, such as cyclones, monsoons, droughts and floods, changes to the geographical distribution of these events, and consequently increased stress to the ecosystems, resulting in rising sea levels, glacial melt, and clean water scarcity, increasing the vulnerability of people living in these regions, as well as the devastating impact on native species. Climate change-induced extreme weather events disproportionately affect the most vulnerable in countries including Ethiopia, Zambia, Bangladesh and India by increasing child malnutrition, forced migration and poverty. The United Nations has shown that India and China, the largest developing nations, are likely to be hit hardest by climate change. More than half of the 74 reviewed papers in a comprehensive study by Millard in 2011 show that anthropogenic climate change will cause an increase in the frequency, intensity, and length of extreme weather events in Europe. Disasters cause a decrease in biodiversity and the predicted extinction of unique and wonderful species, as species of flora and fauna that have adapted to a stable climate through evolution over millions of years are driven to extinction from rapid changes. In Europe, several studies predict decreasing forest biodiversity, and in the United States of America, climate change models predict a decrease in bat populations in northwestern America and small mammal populations in the Great Basin. These are just some examples of the species that will be lost. Changes to the hydrology of the Yakima Basin ecosystem will have severe implications for agriculture, biodiversity, and aquatic ecosystems as it sinks in Oregon. But also, these hydrological changes are thought to destabilize northwestern forests and bioenergy crop growth. Since bioenergy provides us with an alternative to dirty fossil fuels, climate change would actually prevent us from taking this reasonable alternative, showing that we need to take immediate action. Australia, too, is experiencing an average temperature increase, causing the increased prevalence of droughts, bushfires, flooding, and most significantly, the extensive bleaching of its Great Barrier Reef from anthropogenic ocean acidification, where we could lose thousands of coral, bird, fish, and aquatic organism species. In China, the future of its agricultural industry, absolutely essential for feeding its huge population, is clouded with uncertainty, where the best predictive climate models predict a slight short-term increase, and the worst climate models show severe water shortages upon exhaustion of the glacier runoff. Additionally, it is shown that there will be an increase in aridity of the drier north, an increase in water in the south, and threats to biodiversity of wilderness in pristine areas such as the Chiang Mai Mountain. Climate change has severe implications for ecosystems, thus extending to agriculture and food security, and therefore worldwide human health. The effects include, but are not limited to, increased likelihood of microbiological food pathogens, zoonosis, transfer of animal pathogens to humans such as the 2009 swine flu epidemic, and increased prevalence of mycotoxins from fungi, as well as from insects, pests, toxic algal blooms, and soil and water contamination. Imagine 7 billion people eating contaminated food. The environmental disaster on our hands will reach us. Whilst as Greenpeace, the melting of the ice caps, increased species extinction, ocean acidification, aggravated climate change from forest industries, increased air pollution and other atrocities are at the forefront of our minds, what we would like you stakeholders with higher priorities in the environment to understand is that climate change will affect you. Renewable energy crops, forests and fauna in the US and Europe are threatened. Ecosystems in the Chinese Chiang Mai Mountains and agriculture is predicted to suffer. Australia's Great Barrier Reef is dying, and vulnerable developing nations will be hit hardest by these natural disasters. But the anthropogenic damage to climate, to our ecosystems, to our biodiversity, to our agriculture will come back to bite us from our own plates, from contaminated food. We need to make climate change a priority for the protection of our beautiful world and the safety of its people.
So what do other stakeholders have as policies to protect the environment and reduce carbon emissions? What are their perspectives? Well, they all slightly differ, many of which have been guided by Kyoto Protocol, which is an international treaty that aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The whole treaty is based on the evidence that global warming is apparent and that man-made carbon dioxide emissions is the cause of this. The goals and policies of the European Union have stated and hold their promotion of electricity from renewable energy, with voluntary commitments by car makers to reduce CO2 emissions by 25% and proposals of taxation of energy products. The European Union strives to achieve the transformation towards low carbon energy. Their goal is to reach by 2020 a 20% in greenhouse gas emissions of European energy from renewables and 20% improvement of energy efficiency. They also have goals already in place for their challenges by 2030, which according to them will take a longer time to develop and execute.
Meanwhile, here in Australia, there are also many active measures and policies to help stop climate change. The RET, Renewable Energy Target of Australia, consists of two main schemes. It creates financial incentive for more larger renewable energy power stations by turning off appliances and lights, less money, public transport, no parking fine, renewable bags at supermarkets rather than getting more plastic bags in the environment. So while Australia uses money as a real enticement to save energy and reduce carbon emissions, the United Kingdom is looking at nuclear energy as a way to help the carbon issues. With the conduction of many experiments and reports, the UK have decided that nuclear electricity would be a more efficient way of saving energy. Currently, nuclear energy saves emissions of 2.5 billion tonnes of CO2 in relation to coal. Studies have shown that doubling the world's nuclear output will reduce CO2 emissions from power generation by around a quarter. As for the least developed countries, some of the most vulnerable to climate change, they're the least able to recover from climate stresses, and their economic growth is highly dependent on climate-sensitive sectors. The fight against climate change since the early 1990s, so the least developed countries are supported by other countries to reduce emissions, enhance resilience, and support the Kyoto Protocol goals.
A United Nations report on the environment suggests that in the future, meat and dairy-based diets will be less sustainable. This will be the result of a mix of human-caused variants, such as population increase, pollution, and furthermore, climate change. The large change of world climate and animal habitat caused by climate change is expected to reduce the population of animals and will cause basic agriculture to grow at very unsustainable rates. The UN report mentions that industries ranging from big business, small business, and energy production industries will need to adapt to the lack of resources, or else they may face a sharp decline of profits. The decline of business can further lead to unemployment and less people spending money to keep the economy flowing. Alongside business being damaged, the tourism industry, which is vital to many countries' economies, will be damaged, as unsustainable weather events such as an increase of snowfall, rain, or heat waves as a result of climate change may discourage tourists from visiting countries. The unpredictable weather events caused by climate change is expected to cause damage to infrastructure in major cities. All transport lines, including roads, railroads, airports, and sea, may face damage by various changes in the weather pattern, such as flooding, heavy rain, and snowstorms. This will require constant maintenance and repairs to upkeep and may cause an increase in taxes. Buildings such as homes and businesses may be affected by this, which will further add to the increase of taxes and affect the pricing of property. The delay in transportation may affect the time it takes to get resources delivered, which causes a slowdown in production. With the many damages caused by climate change, there will be many coping costs as the world will need to adapt to the changes. An increase of floods may occur due to the sea level rise caused by global warming. Many major cities may need to invest in floodgates and flood prevention programs to combat this. Farmers will have to find ways to adapt to changes in the agriculture by investing in new ways to irrigate crops during drought and keep animals hydrated and cool during heat waves. The rising of sea levels may also potentially create an increase of natural disasters, such as cyclones. This will further increase the need to spend money to combat disasters and repairing cities after they are hit by cyclones. The increase of disasters has strong potential to damage businesses and increase taxes, which in turn may affect the flow of the economy and money being spent. The change of climate will likely have the potential to damage the production of resources. With the production of resources being slowed down and the focus of money being spent to fix this problem, the economy will be severely damaged as a result.
Within the Greenpeace organisation, we strive in order to reduce the effect of climate change by making decisions that benefit the environment entirely. There are many different ways in which we can reduce climate change and help the environment. A couple of solutions include investing in wind power and switching to biofuels and biodiesels. One environmentally friendly solution that can help combat climate change is wind power. Wind power is a good solution as it is finite, as it will always be there. Unlike fossil fuels, wind power doesn't produce pollutants like carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide. Not only does wind power not produce any harmful pollutants, but due to technology advancements, the price of wind power has dropped about 80% over the last 30 years. However, even though wind power seems like a great solution towards climate change, it does have some negatives. In this current time, companies don't have a suitable method of storing the electricity generated by the wind turbines, and also wind power can only satisfy about 10% of the total energy demand. Another solution that helps the environment is switching to biofuels instead of fossil fuels. Biodiesels can be defined as liquid or gaseous fuels for the transport sector that are predominantly produced from biomass. The demand for biofuels is expected to increase as it is offering many benefits that include sustainability, reduction of greenhouse gases, and many others. The difference between biofuels and petroleum-based fuels is the oxygen content. Biofuels have a higher oxygen content than fossil fuels, which means that they are non-polluting, sustainable, reliable, and renewable. Not only can biofuels be used as fuels, but can also be a promising method in electricity generation in the future as technology improves. Like biofuels, biodiesels are also renewable and is a synthetic-like fuel that is made from vegetable oils, animal fats, and waste cooking oil. With only some engine modifications, biodiesels can be used directly as fuel. Major environmental benefits of biofuels and biodiesels is greenhouse gas reductions, air pollution reduction, biodegradability, improved land and water use, and less toxicity. Unfortunately, there are some restrictions with switching to biodiesels, and this would include that if people were to switch from petroleum-based fuels, they would need to make modifications to their vehicle's engine. There are many ways in which we can go about fighting climate change. Two very good ways that help reduce the consumption of our scarce resource of fossil fuels are investing in wind power and switching to biofuels. Yes, both these methods have some minor negatives towards them, but as technology improves, these negatives can be reduced until they have disappeared. At Greenpeace, the environmental implications of climate change, the loss of biodiversity, bleaching of beautiful reefs, melting of glaciers and ice caps are at the forefront of our minds. But climate change is an omnipresent phenomenon that will affect every stakeholder and everything: economies, agriculture, infrastructure, and human lives. We need to make combating climate change a priority for the preservation of our beautiful natural environment.
Talk to your neighbors, they'll be our saviors. Ask them to join us, we'll need their friends too. We can all be cool, burn less fossil fuel, lower our health costs, and breathe fresh air too. Now's the time to act. We'll teach all the facts, debunk all hoaxes, and they're liars too. Watch the waters rise, it's flooding from all sides. We're losing topsoil and farmers' homes too. People around the world march with flags unfurled. Leaders must listen or they will go too. Climate change is real, our future is not sealed. You may deny it, but you'll suffer too. Watch the waters rise, it's flooding from all sides. We're losing topsoil and farmers' homes too. Climate change is real, our future is not sealed. You may deny it, but you'll suffer too.